Okay, welcome to Economics 3.7. We are going to start talking about supply and demand together. If you look at this picture right here, it's kind of interesting because this is very fitting for today with COVID. Small business owners are really struggling right now through COVID. A lot of them have had to shut down, close their doors, take out loans just to have a chance at survival. For our terms, the first term, and this is a really big one in economics, is equilibrium. Equilibrium is going to be where your demand and your supply curves intersect. So all that algebra 1 where you had to find the solution of the equations, the linear equations, that's what this is, finding the point of intersection. And when you have equilibrium, that is where demand is equal to supply. You always hear that, supply equals demand. Yeah, that's 90% of economics. So what happens here is, let's say I have 100 phones. I'm selling 100 of these phones. I will sell exactly 100, and I will have exactly 100 customers wanting one. So I won't have customers leave disappointed that they didn't buy one, and I will not leave with an excess supply. It's perfect equilibrium. Now that's really kind of hard to do. It's easy in theory, it's a great concept, but it's hard to do in real life. How do you accurately anticipate how much demand there's going to be, like down to the exact unit? So we tend to really always be trying to shoot to be at that point. And when we're not at that point, we're at disequilibrium. And that is when quantity supplied and quantity demand are not equal. One's greater than the other. Well, when demand is greater than supply, that's where we have our next term, which is a shortage. More people are desiring the product than we have a supply. Take phone again. If I have 100 people wanting the phone and I only have the supply of 50 phones, there's a shortage. I'm going to have customers leaving disappointed. On the other hand, we have a surplus when supply is greater than demand. So if I had 100 phones and only 50 people buying them, I'd have 50 left over, and that's usually where clearance and sale items happen, because to get rid of the other 50, I'm going to have to somehow increase demand, and the way to increase demand is to lower price. Now, when we have this, we have two things that the government can enact. They can enact a price ceiling and a price floor. So what a price ceiling is, it's exactly that. It's a maximum at the top. It's a maximum price that someone can sell or charge for a good or service. An example of that is the second term, which is rent control. You hear this a lot in New York, rent-controlled apartments. And there's even an episode of Friends where Ross and Rachel go because there was a woman that was going to die. She was on her deathbed. And they were trying to go in and get the info on her apartment because it was a rent-controlled apartment. And that means that the landlord can't turn around and say, oh, I'm going to raise your rent from $1,500 to $2,000. No, if it's rent control at $1,500, it has to stay at $1,500. We also have price floors, and that's a minimum price for a good or service. And the government will enact these on things like milk, bread, has a lot to do with farmers so that they can get paid for their efforts. Because if farmers lose money, and I've said this the whole course, we need farmers, we need truckers. If farmers go out of business, what are we going to eat? We need farmers. So a lot of times the government will enact a price floor to ensure that farmers are compensated for their services and goods. Minimum wage is an example of a price floor. Federal minimum wage is $7.25. That's the minimum wage in the state of Tennessee, which means that a worker cannot be paid less than $7.25. Even if equilibrium was at $6.60, if you are willing to take less pay, they have to pay you $7.25. So we tend to take the free market system for granted, like we just expect it. When we go in a store, and if we want a cell phone, it's usually there for purchase, a CD. If you've got some shoes, we usually find it. And that's because of the free market. Remember, free market is where our buying habits encourage producers to produce what we want. Okay? So how do you balance supply and demand? And this is a good little cartoon here, the arm wrestle. because you really want supply and demand to tie. You want them to be equal. When they're equal, we have equilibrium. And sometimes, just like in arm wrestling, you might have the supply that gets a little more, then you might have demand get a little more shortage. But ideally, we want them to be equal. Here is a supply and demand schedule. We've combined it, and this is what we've used from the earlier sections in this topic. Still using the price of a slice of pizza. Now we've got quantity demanded and quantity supplied together. And if I was to ask you what equilibrium is here, you should be able to tell me it's at $3. Why? How do you know it's equilibrium? Because supply equals demand. If you look at $1 and $2, you can see that demand for both of those price points is higher than supply. We're going to have a shortage. We're going to have customers coming in wanting pizza, and we're going to throw our hands up and go, sorry, we don't have any more. And you might think, oh, well, that's good. We sell everything. No, if you're a business and customers are constantly coming in and you don't have the item, what are they going to do? They're going to go find some place that does have it, and you're going to lose customers. Now, if we go from $4 to $6, we're going to have a surplus. So I'm going to be paying people to make pizzas, and I'm going to have all this work and all this effort that I've paid to have pieces of pizza left over at the end of the day. I don't want that either. That's why that equilibrium is a point that we try to match. That is where we are going to maximize profit. And you can see at $3, total revenue would be $600, and that's a maximum profit for us. So when we're at disequilibrium, that is when supply and demand are not equal. And this happens more often than not. Like I said, businesses are trying to hover around that equilibrium point or stay on it. So disequilibrium in our previous section here, as you can see, is anything other than $3 in price. And when we're not at equilibrium, we can have a shortage or we can have a surplus. Now here we've got our supply and demand curves, and equilibrium is this point right here where the two intersect at $3. We've already said that. $3, demand's going to be 200 slices a day. Should be able to sell every one of them, not have anything left over. It's a good point. If we go down here till $2, we're going to have a shortage. And you can see as we go across here, supply is, I'm only going to be willing to supply 150 slices of pizza, but 250 slices will be demanded. So then I'm going to have some angry customers that wanted pizza, and I'm like, sorry, I don't have any. So that's a shortage there. It's going to be a shortage. Sometimes we have disequilibrium, like when you start talking about college stadiums or pro stadiums. If they have, like the Titans, when the Titans are making a run for the Super Bowl, it's hard to find a ticket. Like everybody wants to go see the Titans play. But when the Titans stink, you got a whole lot of empty seats. So on those really amazing seasons when they're selling out, do they need to increase the stadium size because demand is greater than supply? No, that's where you have to kind of think about it, because is demand high because they're having a winning season? So the minute the season goes down, you'd have even more supplies of seats and nobody wanting them. Yeah, so right here, if you've got a shortage, there's two things that the owner could do. You could add more seats. That's costly and could hurt you in the long run, or just raise the price of tickets. And if you've ever bought season tickets to college football games, I know when we had UT season tickets, the Alabama, Georgia, Florida games, those were all like $130 a ticket, but the University of Texas El Paso was like $30 because, again, supply and demand. Demand was low for those games. Now, sometimes the government will intervene to control prices, and this is where we start talking about price ceilings and price floors. Again, if we start talking about rent control, here's this little meme here. You see the old man, he's got a big bag, it looks like apples. And then you have the young lady, and she's got a smaller bag of apples. And, the old man is saying, I would die, but I have a rent-controlled apartment. Basically, like she's sitting here going, I can barely afford anything. I need a rent control apartment. Like I could have yours. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm good. I can live forever. I'm in rent control. Um, and this is something that the government will do, like Nashville right now. Oh my gosh, if you go to downtown Nashville or any of the surrounding areas, they are building condos and apartments like crazy. There are tons sitting there empty. I wouldn't be surprised in several years if Nashville doesn't enact a price ceiling, because when that happens, you're going to increase demand and it might get all those empty apartments filled. And here are two graphs about rent control. So you can see here the equilibrium point for this rent is $900 a month. That's equilibrium. That's where supply equals demand. That should be the selling price. However, if the government comes in and drops the price, maybe they're trying to say 900 is not affordable for this area. We need affordable housing. We're going to drop it down to 600. You can see what happens here. We didn't change supply or demand, so we're just shifting down the price point. We're at 600. Supply is going to be less than demand. We are going to create a shortage, and we're going to get all of those apartments filled up. Now, a price floor is when the government sets a minimum price. And again, a lot of times this has to do with farmers, minimum wage, things like that. Because right now, think about it in COVID. There's a lot of people who are getting paid less than they normally would because they're just desperate to have a job. And there would be people who probably would accept less than minimum wage if it was legally able to right now. Here is the supply and demand curves for labor. And in this particular market, equilibrium is at $6.60. So that means that workers are willing to be paid $6.60. When we enact that price floor, and it's interesting because on the graph, you would think floor, bottom, ceiling, top. It's the opposite on the graph. When it's a price floor, it's above equilibrium. When it's a price ceiling, it's below. We have the federal minimum wage at $7.25. Well, this is going to create a shortage of jobs and a surplus of workers, because the supply of labor, there's going to be a lot more people going, ooh, I'll take $7.25. I want a job, than at $6.60. But your businesses are not going to be able to afford as many workers at $7.25 as they could at $6.60. So that's where we're going to end up getting a surplus of people wanting to work, and you could turn around and say there's not as many jobs as there are workers. This is really cool. I like this meme, especially when we're in here in politics and we see everybody fighting. You got the two mascots. You got the elephant and the donkey, the Democrat and Republican mascots. And they're sitting here arguing over the farm budget while the poor farmer is over here, with his bills and his bank statement going, hello, while y'all are arguing, I'm drowning over here, need a little help. Yeah, and farmers rely on these government subsidies and price floors and things like that to help them stay in business. Here's one way that the government can support dairy farmers. They can enact a price floor. They can set a price floor for milk. And when the price of milk drops down to that price floor, what the government will do is they'll start buying the milk to keep the price from falling any further. So that will help increase demand because the government is now purchasing it. They will take that milk. If you think about it, in our school cafeteria, what is the drink that comes with your meal? It's milk. The government's buying from dairy farmers. Sometimes the government, like in the infographic, will turn it into powdered milk. And then maybe they will distribute it and reconstitute it. Or, when someone's having a famine or they need food, it's easy to drop them from the planes. And that is the end of 3.7. See you for 3.8.